I am honored at this time to bring before us Dr. Todd Titon. This, this brother is so gifted and so dynamic. The first book written on C.L. Franklin, Give Me This Mountain, was written by him. And he and I met during that time because he was there in New Bethel Baptist Church and had a tripod like this one behind us in the center aisle of New Bethel Baptist Church, recording and receiving and holding interviews with Reverend Franklin that later ended in the book, Give Me This Mountain. Of course, he's the author of 7 books according to the bio that we have written for you. But it was just such a pleasure to talk to him and then to know that he was so willing to come and to share with us in this conference. And so I want you to hear him and receive him, Professor Todd Titon. Give him a big hand as he comes at this time.
I'm not used to this kind of a microphone, but I'll do my best. It's a great pleasure to be here. I want to thank Pastor Branch and Sister Gates for inviting and cajoling and convincing me to come back. It's a pleasure to be in Detroit. I thought what I would try to do for you is tell you a couple stories about my encounter with Reverend Franklin. His close friends, many of them call him Frank, and some people call him Reverend. I heard that some people call him a rabbi, but I always call him Reverend Franklin, and so that's what I'm going to refer to him by. And after I tell you some stories, I thought to play back for you, since this is a conference of ministers, I thought to play back for you part of the interviews where he was talking about a sermon that he was thinking about preaching, and then show you how those thoughts got into the sermon itself. I'm a professor, you know. So, and anyway, some people ask me how it was that I first heard about Reverend Franklin, and it was I was in graduate school at the University of Minnesota in Minneapolis, and I was playing in a blues band, playing guitar in a blues band. It was an African-American band leader named Lazy Bill Lucas, and one night we came back from a gig real late, and I just crashed on his couch. Woke up the next morning, and I felt something on my shoulder, and it was Lazy Bill, and he was saying to me, come on, son, it's time to go to church. And it was Sunday morning. I said to myself, oh, well, huh? So I stumbled out the door after him, and we went to the St. Mark's Baptist Church, where he, this is in Minneapolis on Lake Avenue, I think it was, and he, or Lake Street maybe, he played the piano. And we went into the church, and they were singing those old meter hymns, you know, and I'd never heard anything like that before. And then when it come to the sermon, I'd never heard anything like that before. Now, I had gone to high school in Atlanta, and I had been there during the time of integration, and I knew who Dr. King was, and I knew who his father was. But I hadn't heard this musical preaching, and as as somebody who was interested in music, I remembered it. I said to myself, I want to learn more about that. So I asked Bill afterwards, I said, where can I hear more of that? And he said, well, you come to church with me every Sunday. You will. I said, well, I'm looking for a shortcut. So he showed me LPs that he had of Reverend Franklin. And I said, can I borrow one? And then I asked to borrow them all. I was very moved by what I heard, and I resolved at that time that I was someday going to meet Reverend Franklin. But I was writing my PhD dissertation on blues music, and so I put that on the back burner. But when I started teaching at Tufts University, I telephoned Reverend Franklin, and I said to him who I was. Somehow that didn't impress him any. And how I'd come to hear about him, and said I wanted to meet him. He said, well, yeah, maybe, I guess so. And then I said, well, can we set a date? And he was very reluctant to set a date on the telephone, and I couldn't quite understand why. I would propose a date, and he would say, well, maybe. And then I proposed another date. This was about the 6th date. And he said, well, why don't you come on that date, because then Aretha's going to be there. And I said, well, that'd be very nice, but it's you I want to see. And he said, well, come anytime. So we set the date, but then we had to postpone it. I had some health issues. But then when I came out, I had arranged to see him on a particular Sunday. I was going to listen to a sermon, and then we're going to meet him in the pastor's office after sermon. And it just happened, I had my ticket and everything, it just happened that week, Florence Ballard Chapman, one of the Supremes, had, and he was going to preach her funeral. And that was what was happening on Sunday. And so I was going to meet him after he preached her funeral. So I didn't think anything about it, really. I got to the church, or about maybe, half an hour before supposed to start. I couldn't get near the church. I couldn't get within 10 blocks of the church. A friend of mine had driven me down there, but I had no idea. They had set up loudspeakers outside the church, and there was a crowd, and I said, something must be happening here. And I got out of the car, and I started trying to make my way through the crowd, I didn't even know which direction the church was. I had to ask. And finally a policeman came up to me, a black policeman, and I was pretty conspicuous. I had a big old tape recorder around my neck, big old tape recorder around my neck, and I had cameras around my neck, and a bunch of lenses, like a mama possum and a baby possum. And the policeman must have thought that I was with the press. So he said, follow me. And thank God he did, because he took me then into the church. We went right through the crowd into the church somehow. He deposited me. We went in through the dining room into the kitchen and deposited me in the hands of a deacon, who then led me out into the sanctuary, which was packed, except that there was no seat for me. So he sat me down in the choir stand. And there was a woman in a green robe next to me on one side and one on the other. And talk about being conspicuous. So this is my introduction to New Bethel, and I'm sitting there, and in the front row, there is the immediate family, presumably, of Florence Ballard Chapman. But suddenly there's a commotion at the back of the church. And it turns out that this immediate family was a bogus immediate family. They weren't the right one. They were imposters. They wanted to get up to the front so they could see Stevie Wonder, and so they had to be ushered out, and the real immediate family came in. All of this being explained to me by the ladies sitting next to me in the green robes. And, you know, my eyes were wide open, my mouth was... I had never seen anything like this. I couldn't imagine what was going to happen. And then suddenly, both sides of me, everybody stood up. And I felt I had to stand up too, so I stood up. And I felt a bump on my left shoulder. And then I felt a bump on my right shoulder. And I said, "What's going on?" I looked around, and they're So I tried to avoid the bumps best I could, and then I realized it was going to be a song. I was hoping for, you know, Swing Low, something that I knew, but it wasn't. And just then, as I realized, you know, that I was going to have to try to mouth the words like they do on television, I got my mouth going. Just then, the bright lights came on, and it was the 6 o'clock news filming the whole thing. Camera pointed right at me. So that was my introduction to New Bethel. And afterwards, after the eulogy and so on, I met Reverend Franklin. This was 1976. 1976. I met him in his study, and he said, "I understand you had quite an experience." I said, "Yes." I said, "But I'm looking forward to talking to you." And so we had a good conversation for about 45 minutes or so, which I recorded, and then I was very fortunate that the National Endowment for the Humanities, which is, as you know, a Washington, D.C. Granting agency that gives money to scholars and college professors, accepted my proposal to spend a year in Detroit with Reverend Franklin. And so I was here in the year 1977-78. Unfortunately, he was not very well during this year. He had bad bronchitis and had to be in and out of the hospital. But I did have a chance to speak with him many times. Our conversations were always rather formal, not because I wanted it that way, but because he did. I would go to his house, and he would come down the stairs always with a pack of cigarettes in his vermilion smoking jacket. Very elegant. Looked like he just came out of the Casbah or something, you know. And he spoke very slowly and deliberately to me. But we must have spoken on 20 different occasions, and I have maybe 25, 30 hours of his thoughts, which kind of got boiled down into the life history in the book, Give Me This Mountain. But he also spoke a lot about pastor's life, what it was like to be, and some about sermons. I had videotaped some sermons and played them back to him and asked him to comment on them. I would say he was more amused by all of this than anything. He found it kind of strange and interesting and curious and also amusing that some professor would be here doing this. But anyway, I did the best I could. And I'd like now to share with you, if you are willing to hear it. Some of you are so young you probably never had an opportunity to hear him or see him. But we'll listen to him speak now. He speaks very slowly here. You'll hear my little pipsqueak voice, and then you'll hear his speaking, and then we'll switch to the video. One of 7 sermons that I videotaped of his. Is that all right? Let's see if my tools work. You know, that was one of the clearest expositions that I've heard. It was really, if my colleagues, professors, were as clear and as communicative, I'd have had a better education.
I read last night on this thing I might preach Sunday morning. That man at the pool in Jerusalem.
Oh, yeah.
Jesus said, "Do you want to be made whole?" That's an interesting question, isn't it?
Why he had
No, the question of do you want to be?
made whole?
Obviously, to some degree, he had wanted to be, or he wouldn't have lain there for 20 years. It's an interesting question. Do you want to be?
Well, I can imagine what would happen if it happened today.
Yes.
Supposing, supposing the Lord appeared and said that right in the baptismal pool in New Bethel, you know, in 3 weeks,
Mm-hmm.
at such and such a time, the angel was going to come and trouble the water.
Mm-hmm.
I'll bet there'll be a lot of people there.
Oh, yeah. And only one could get in.
Yeah.
Be a lot of scrambling for that first place.
I bet there would. Now, you preached on this subject before.
Yeah, a long time ago.
There's a record out on it, I believe.
Yes, I think I have a record on that.
Is it your practice to use some of your time to listen back at that record, or do you just figure that was so long ago that
I want to update it, yeah.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Do you want to be made whole? You know, it's interesting that that word whole has to do with holiness.
I didn't realize.
Yeah, there is a relevance.
Uh-huh.
Wholeness means holiness. Wholeness, that you are together spiritually, physically, socially, morally, you know. The whole person applying himself to his total situation, his wholeness. Some people think it has only spiritual connotation because people think it makes you kind of mysterious and otherworldly, you know, that you are above. You might talk in tongues. You might go through certain gyrations induced by some spiritual inner urge. It means wholeness. You know, an adjusted personality.
Well, maybe there's some people who don't want to be made whole.
Well, I would think that some people don't know that they need to be. It's a lack of knowledge.
He's into the sermon just a little bit. Jesus is about to arrive at the feast, and we'll hear it to the end, and see it. The black and white has a kind of historical quality, which is appropriate.
So Jesus arrived. Well, there is no record of his disciples being with him. All right. But being at feast time, there was an atmosphere of festivities in Jerusalem. And people had their booths and their tents and all of their color and all of the extravaganza that attends a feast. And Jesus was there. And while he was walking around and observing, he came upon a pool, a famous pool, a pool called Bethesda. There is some controversy among scholars about the word Bethesda. There are those who think it might have been Beth-Zatha, which is Aramaic for pool, rather than house. But most of us contend that it was Bethesda, because Bethesda means house of mercy. And that's what these folks were here for. They were there for mercy. The question is, as we look about ourselves and as we survey the innumerable people who are afflicted, who've reached old age and bad health, but they are not alone, because young ones, even before they reach their 20s, have lost their health. But when we become victims of infirmity, disease, etc., in this vast universe, when they said that there are millions and billions of planets, and the planet Earth is an out-of-the-way planet, in one corner of the universal system, being on this planet, in one corner of God's vast universe, when we are ill, when we are burdened with affliction, is there anyone in the universal system who cares? Is there anyone that can help? Is there anyone who is concerned? When doctors and medicine, when all of the other people who have established themselves to be helpful, when they fail, is there anyone else? This story is about a God that cares. No matter how many billions of creatures he has on this planet and any other planet, if there are any, he cares. God has had a hard time getting man to understand his concern about mankind. He sent the prophets He sent the sages. He sent the elders. He sent the wise men. He sent his son. Trying to get man to see that God is concerned. He had to become the incarnate God. He had to wrap himself in flesh and condescend to our level of understanding. And we are still blind as to the God who cares, as to the God who loves. So this man at the pool of Bethesda had been there 38 years. 38 years. Lying on a cot, on a folding bed. 38 years of sickness and pain. 38 years of fever. 38 years of disappointment. But still he lay there. People obviously didn't care too much about him. For he had no nurses' aides. Apparently he had no family to help him. There is a tradition which says that his wild foolishness in his youth had rendered him thus. I don't know, but the record says he had been there 38 years. 38 years he'd seen the water trouble. 38 years he'd made an attempt, only to be too late. Now the Jews had a great superstition about water and about spirits. They believed that in this pool an angel came down and troubled the water. If you've ever been to Palestine and have seen the scarcity of water, if you have ever seen the River Jordan, you could understand why salt and water was sometimes used for money. You can understand why they looked upon water as having not only a thirst-quenching effect, but holy efficacy. It wasn't unusual. It wasn't unusual for them to believe that annually when that water bubbled and moved and the waves dashed, that it was a spirit, that it was an angel coming from God. And as the angel ruffled his or her wings in the water, he left healing efficacy in that water, because he had come from a perfect clime, a clime of holiness and perfection. So he left healing. He'd come from a land where there was no pain, no sorrow, no death, no sickness. And he left some of that perfection in the water. I wish somebody here would pray with me. They thought it was an angel because people in the area thought that hills and mountains and springs and pools and rivers and groves all had their own local spirits. So it is understandable that the people of a Yahwistic culture would believe that Yahweh, their God, had something to do with the troubling of the water. I'm trying to get you to pray with me. You ought to be able to see those 5 porches loaded with sick people on all sides, in all sinners, sick people. And Jesus, no doubt, had been directed in terms of attention to note the most famous case there. Somebody might have said, your reputation has gone on before you. And we've heard that you heal and that you open blinded eyes. And if you're going to do any business on this occasion, I think you ought to consider this man that's been here 38 years. We watched him and he tried. We watched him and he's failed. And yet he persists in staying here. Oh Lord. And they directed Jesus' attention. And Jesus walked up to his bed and said to him, do you want to be made whole? Oh Lord. Isn't that a strange question coming from Jesus? The man has been here 38 years. The man has been patient. Oh Lord, the man has not given up. And do you mean to tell a man or ask a man that's been here 38 years, does he want to be made whole? Oh Lord, you know, sometimes we get the word whole and holiness confused. But wholeness means holiness. And holiness means wholeness. It means that which affects your mind, that which affects your body, that which affects your spirit. Oh Lord, it means total adjustment. You don't hear me? Oh Lord. So Jesus was saying, do you want your mind straightened out? Do you want your body made whole? Do you want to be cured mentally, socially, morally, and spiritually? Do you want to be made whole? Oh Lord. Well, I know the man looked up at Jesus. Oh Lord. And said, well, Lord, I don't know. But I've been here 38 years trying to. But Jesus knows that sometimes your mind is not really made up. Oh Lord, you may be on a sick bed, but you do not really determinedly want to be made whole. Oh, Lord. Sometimes to get you out of that bed brings problems, brings wife, and brings obligation. Oh, Lord. Jesus said, I want you to clear your mind altogether. Do you really want to be made whole? Do you really want to be straightened out? Do you really want to get off that bed and walk? Oh, Lord. If you really do, oh, Lord. If you really do, if you really do, get up your bed. Get up your bed. Roll it up. And go to home walk. It ain't long yet. Walk. With your bed on you. God bless you. Take up your bed and walk. If in faith and determination you will cooperate with the power of God, whatever your problem is, it can be corrected. I'll repeat that for you. If in faith, if with your will, if in determination, you will cooperate with the power of God, then God can help you to resolve your problem. God bless you.
Well, it's a privilege to bring the voice of the prophet to you all this morning. Thank you very much.